What did you think? Did that bring back some things that you're seeing in your family and you experienced yourself?
Yes, it has. I remember as a child being teased because I couldn't hear properly and I couldn't stand loud noises. And I used to always get into trouble, not so much in school, but at home. At school it wasn't so bad because I used to sit down right down the back and the teacher hardly noticed me in the back. But at home, I used to get into trouble all the time because I couldn't hear my mom when she was asking me to do things, like do my chores. And I'd always get into trouble and get smacked all the time, and I thought it was something I was doing wrong, and I thought I was bad because I was the only one getting all this hiding all the time. And then when I found out that I did have ear trouble, hearing problems, and then I got it rectified, and then I told my mother about it, and she felt really sad for what she did to me all those years when I was younger, because she didn't know what was wrong with me either until I went away. But in those years, we didn't have like medical checks and things they got now. So it was really hard for my parents, especially my mother, to understand why I wasn't listening and why I was behaving like that. But as a child, I was a good child only. Just because of my hearing, I did things wrong in my mother's eyes anyway. And like even now as an adult, sometimes I can't stand loud music or people talking loud, and sometimes I can't hear. And I've had some hearing tests done, and the specialist actually told me that I'm losing my hearing in my left ear. And that's the ear that I had the operation. But being an educator working in school and seeing all these kids with those ear trouble, seeing how hard it is for them to learn, makes you feel for them, and I know what they're going through because I've been through that myself. And I try to, if I'm working with kids that got hearing problems, I try to do the right thing, like make sure they're sitting in front of me where they can see me, or explain to them maybe 3 or 4 times, and then actually show them, pointing to what they need to do, and doing it hands-on, they learn easier. But when they do have ear trouble and they can't hear on that day, it's very hard for them to learn, and that's when they show bad behavior. Like they run around the classroom, or they just sit quiet in the corner, or they just sit with tears rolling down their eyes and they won't say anything. And the teacher don't know that the kids can't hear because the kids don't tell them, and the kids are constantly being growled by the teacher. Oh, you're a naughty boy, you spend all your time in the naughty chair. But they don't realize it's because they can't hear, because they've got hearing problems. But if once they get educated on the problems that Indigenous kids have with hearing loss, they sort of realize, and say, oh, maybe I shouldn't have growled them so much or put them in the corner so much, and maybe I should have been more helping towards him,
Did watching that video bring up some feelings for you too about things that happened in the past and things?
Yes. Because I know when I got into trouble, and being the only one always getting into trouble and being disciplined all the time makes you feel like you did something wrong and you're a bad kid, and sometimes it makes you feel really upset and you just go and have a cry, or you get so angry where you just trash things or throw things at people, and because that's the only way you can deal with it. Until you get a bit older and you find better ways of dealing with it. But as a child, it's like, I've been through that myself. I threw a few tantrums, and because my mom said, come here, I'm going to smack you, you didn't listen to me, I spoke to you 3 or 4 times and you still don't listen. And then saying things like, you get your friends or your family saying, oh, you deaf, you dumb, you can't hear, so you can't do this, or you can't say that. And especially when it came to sports. Well, I was hopeless at sports anyway, but because of my hearing, I was always falling over. And I couldn't understand why, and the other kids couldn't understand why, and I was always getting the blame for the team losing. It was always my fault. Oh, you didn't bounce the ball properly, or you didn't catch the ball when we threw it to you, And then I say, well, I didn't know you was going to throw them. But I was shouting out to you, catch, I said, well, I didn't hear you. And it's hard for them to understand that as well. And they just think that you're being mean and you want them to lose. And it's really hard when you get the whole team on you, ganging up on you, and you're trying to explain yourself why you can't, because you didn't hear them. But it's like this guy is a disease that's in disguise, Like you don't know you've got it until you actually have a hearing test done. But seeing those kids with hearing loss problems that suffers every day, going to school, and it's very hard for them to learn. And by the time they reach year 7, they don't want to go into high school, especially for the kids who didn't have treatment. So once they get into high school, they find they can't cope with the stuff they have to do, so they just drop out and don't go back to school at all, and then the cycle is just continuing. So then when they have kids with sore ears, they don't know what to do either, because they never got treated for their one, and they had it. So so I think more parents should be in service and educated more on these hearing loss problems our Indigenous kids have.
What would you say to parents about watching this video?
Well, I'd say to them to not to get aggressive towards their children, to try and be understanding and to take them for regular checks to the doctors instead of waiting for the specialist people to come into the school and do it. A mother should know when something is wrong with their child. And it should, they should act straight away, even like being a grandmother and having a granddaughter that had perforated eardrums at 4 weeks old. And taking them to the doctor and listening to the doctor explain it's more common in Indigenous children than non-Indigenous children to have perforated eardrums as babies. And it was really mind-opening for me, because by the time I found out for my hearing loss problem, I was older, and I was freaking out because a newborn baby at 4 weeks old shouldn't have perforated eardrums. And I was saying to the doctor, what could have been the cause of that? And he just said, it's just normal for Indigenous kids to have it. And I thought to myself, goodness, if they can get it when they're newborn babies, just imagine how their life going to be from, before they even start living their life.
But really good that you found out that young age, rather than like when you were 15, 16, when you found out, because it's that baby's going to be protected because people understand, particularly having a grandmother who understands. That's
it. And I try to tell my daughter, to take notice or take her up to the doctor straight away if she's screaming and pulling at her ears all the time. How babies, when they get sore ears, they're always playing with their ears or trying to pull it. So,
And is there anything on that video that you'd like parents to pay close attention to, things that from your perspective that you thought were really important?
Well, like things like if you see a child, being disruptive and bullying other kids and have bad behavior and shouting a lot and not listening, and the parents should try and be more understanding and to learn. I think Indigenous parents need to be in service on this hearing loss especially, because that's the main thing that stops their kids from learning. And if they don't learn, then their whole life is a struggle. If they can't learn in school, then they've got no skills, life skills to survive in the wider community, except their own little community. And it's hard for them when they go out of that community into a strange place and they don't understand the language breakdown and they can't hear, and the people they're with don't know about their problem. So they just sort of close up, go into a little shell and don't say anything or do anything. And then the people think that they're being naughty or misbehaving, being disrespectful, but they know the reason behind it, then they might be more understanding. But that's what Indigenous parents need to be educated on conductive hearing loss, because 9 out of 10 Indigenous kids would have it. And it's a common thing, it's like having a cold to non-Indigenous people. So having sore ears is like common to Indigenous kids.
And I know you've done lots of training in in-servicing for teachers, the non-Indigenous teachers who come through. Is there anything you'd like to say to them?
Non-Indigenous teachers who come to teach in Kimberley School should have this conductive hearing loss as part of their in-service at uni, or even when they come down for orientation, have a session on that. At least that way they'll be prepared when they go into community schools, and they'll know what to expect and what to look for and how to deal with these kids who got hearing problems. It'd be easier for them as well as the child.